The lecture hall aboard the Aurelius Theta was built to intimidate, tiered in concentric arcs, with walls of living moss glass that shimmered with ambient data. The room could seat over 500 sentients. Over a dozen species filled the seats today, with scales, feathers, fur, and chitin catching the light like a shifting mosaic. The central podium pulsed softly with the neural interface of Professor Trillax's lectern. He tapped a claw against it and began the lesson with a practiced calm. "Today," Trillax said, his three luminous eyes scanning the crowd, "we close our series on extinct apex species. I will be concluding with the most infamous of all, a creature once catalogued as Class Omega Rho on the galactic danger scale. It wiped itself out approximately 1 century ago." There was a ripple of interest, especially among the newer students. They were carbon-based bipeds, technologically erratic, behavioral patterns unpredictable. Their legacy was short, brutal, and instructive. This species, once native to a now quarantined world in Sol Sector Terra 3, was considered, for centuries, the deadliest life form ever observed. There were quiet gasps and exchanged glances. One of the Thal units chirped in amusement. "What was it called?" a Zevian student asked, brushing its fronds in curiosity. Trillax smiled, though the expression was alien and unsettling to the uninitiated. "Fortunately, it is gone now. But its name was Human." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone jokingly clutched their datapad as if for protection. At the very back of the hall, in the shadowed upper tier near the emergency bulkhead, a student shifted uncomfortably. He exhaled, slow and measured. The bandages under his uniform tugged with every breath. His left arm lay across his lap. In a sling, the shoulder gently braced. His right leg was stiff, swollen beneath the synthetic cast, tucked awkwardly against the seat. He raised his hand. The gesture was human, fingers straight, palm forward, elbow bent. The motion was slow, deliberate, with an economy of effort that betrayed pain behind every centimeter. Trillax paused, squinting. "Yes, speak, cadet." The human's voice was soft, hoarse. "It's called Earth, sir. We're not gone." Silence clamped the hall like a vacuum seal. Dozens of eyes, lenses, stalks, and sensory appendages turned. No one moved. The overhead lights dimmed slightly in response to the neural tension in the room. Trillax blinked twice. "I beg your pardon?" The cadet slowly shifted forward in his seat, wincing. "Earth. Third planet in Sol Sector. You called it Terra 3, but we never use that name. We call it Earth." Trillax stared. "You are a human?" The young man gave a single nod. "Name's Derek, Midshipman Derek Klein, attached to Xenonavigation and Survival Studies." A Vortari in the row below him scooted sideways, just slightly. Another student began scanning the galactic registry on their lens pad, looking for confirmation. "But the probes," Trillax said slowly. "The reconnaissance missions, none returned. Your planet was classified dead." "Yeah," Derek muttered. "Funny thing about Earth. Half the probes fried in our magnetosphere, the other half got confused by the noise. You ever try triangulating a clean signal through 5,000 overlapping satellite bands and microwave towers?" He paused. "Also, we shot a few down. Thought they were weather balloons." Adrenian near the front raised a trembling limb. "Why would you destroy exploratory probes?" "Because we didn't know what they were," Derek said flatly. "And you sent them during our Cold War." "Wrong timing. We were nervous. Real twitchy back then." A ripple of discomfort. Trillax hesitated. "That is concerning. But perhaps you exaggerate. This must be a mistake. The biological and historical data clearly show human extinction." Derek made an effort to rise. He had to grip the seat in front of him, breath stuttering. His sling slipped, and he caught it with a pained grunt, guiding the injured arm back into place. Slowly, he limped down the aisle toward the central platform. His boots thudded softly against the biotextile floor, but every step broadcast effort. When he reached the central podium, Derek turned and faced the hall. 3 weeks ago," he said, "I crashed on a Class X toxic moon during a training mission. Systems failure. Emergency beacon blocked by a radiation storm. Ship nose dived into a ravine. I dislocated my shoulder on impact. Left leg snapped mid-shaft. Compound fracture. Several students winced. A few looked away entirely. I had 3 options: lie there and die, wait for a rescue that probably wouldn't come, or improvise. Trillax folded his arms, intrigued despite himself. You survived? Derek nodded. Reset my shoulder using the seatbelt from the crash harness and a shattered strut for leverage. Passed out from the pain. Woke up a few hours later and splinted my leg with hull scrap, foam insulation, and a roll of medical tape. Used sap from one of the moon's native trees as antibacterial filler. Had to test it on a cut first to make sure it wouldn't kill me. Primitive, someone whispered. Effective, Derek replied. I built a comm array from the auxiliary battery, copper wiring, and parts of the atmospheric regulator. Took 2 days. Signal finally broke through the interference. Extraction team found me 6 days after the crash. Trillax tapped his lectern. You are certain of these details? I've got the scars, Derek said, lifting his sleeve to show a ridged patch of healing skin along his forearm. Still in recovery, can't fully extend my shoulder. Rehab's another 5 weeks. And I walk with a limp. A Drevian at the edge of the row spoke up. That doesn't sound survivable. Derek's lips twitched. It shouldn't have been. Professor Trillax blinked slowly. This demands verification. Derek shrugged, then hissed and held his shoulder. Check my file, or talk to Lieutenant Harrow. He pulled me out. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Trillax keyed his lectern. A hollow screen unfolded mid-air. Rapid data queries scrolled across it. The room remained utterly still as Derek's personnel file appeared. Photos, mission logs, medical scans, extract reports. He was telling the truth. Trillax slowly sat down. I must amend my lecture, he said quietly. The deadliest species is not gone. It is from Earth, and, evidently, very hard to kill. The silence broke not with laughter, but with a wave of quiet murmuring. Several students made notes, eyes wide. A Grell student reached into their bag and nervously offered Derek a glowing blue stone. We, use these for healing in my culture. Would you like one? Derek blinked. Thanks, but I'll stick with physical therapy and antibiotics. As the class began to pack up, Trillax stood again. His voice was softer now. Midshipman Klein, what drives your kind to endure so? Derek looked around the room at faces filled with fear, curiosity, and awe. We don't aim to be deadly, he said, adjusting his sling with a grunt. We just really, really hate giving up. The class did not disperse quickly. Long after the lecture officially ended, students lingered in awkward clusters. Whispered voices carried across the vaulted chamber, as if afraid to disturb something ancient. The name Earth began threading its way into conversations like a contagion. Derek remained near the podium, half-seated on a stair railing, nursing his injured arm. Someone had fetched him a hydration flask, flavored with something sweet and mildly bitter, alien, and oddly pleasant. The pain in his leg was manageable if he didn't stand too long, but the swelling in his shoulder had started again. He'd overdone it. Professor Trillax hadn't left either. He stood with his back to the room, tail slightly arched deep in private dialogue with the central research terminal via neural uplink. Derek could see the data stream dancing across the display. Archived reports, species logs, footage from pre-contact, satellites, declassified probe telemetry. You said, Trillax began at last, turning slightly, that your people rejected the name Terra 3? Never used it, Derek said, adjusting the sling. You guys labeled us that. We call it Earth. Simple name, but fitting. I see. Trillax walked slowly toward him, one claw clicking lightly with every third step. I've reviewed your record. Your academic scores are unimpressive. Derek gave a tired snort. Yeah, had a concussion during finals. Kinda hard to focus when your balance system's throwing fireworks. But your survival trial scores are near record-setting, Trillax continued. I know how to stay alive, Derek replied. Wasn't always in a classroom. Trillax studied him for a moment longer. Would you permit a demonstration of human biological resilience? Derek gave a wary glance. I'm not doing push-ups. No, Trillax said, raising both hands. Nothing strenuous. I mean, metrics, vital readings, cellular comparisons. Derek considered. You want to scan me? Yes, with your consent. He sighed. Fine, just not the leg. Bruising's deep. Took me 5 minutes to get my pants on this morning. Students edged closer as Trillax fetched a portable bioscanner and activated its tri-beam interface. Derek sat straighter, arm held loose in the sling, and winced as the scanner hummed against his chest, then his temple, then the injured shoulder. The results appeared mid-air, real-time diagnostics. Elevated creatine kinase, indicators of sustained muscular trauma, bone remodeling underway, neurological inflammation, increased white blood cell count, accelerated healing observed in dermal tissue. Trillax's voice rose slightly with each finding. 3 weeks since the crash, you said? Yeah, Derek said. 7 more of rehab, if I do the work. Trillax flicked his antennae forward. That speed is unnatural. No, Derek corrected. It's desperate. Healing fast is useful when you don't know if you'll be ambushed tomorrow. A Hroth student, a tall, silvery species known for their delicate lung systems, raised a tentacle. Why did your species evolve this way? It asked. Pain tolerance, stress endurance, rapid clotting, it's excessive. Derek exhaled. Because our world is mean. That answer didn't satisfy. He elaborated. Earth has everything trying to kill you. Heat waves, ice storms, earthquakes, venomous things, teeth, disease, hunger, people. You want to live there? You get good at bouncing back. A younger Lyral student raised its feathery appendage. But your species wars with itself? Derek gave a bitter smile. Frequently. It's how we test if we've learned anything. The students looked horrified. Not proud of it, he added quickly. But surviving each other taught us more than peace ever did. Professor Trillax paced in a slow circle around him. I found archived footage. Human field medicine during what you call World War II. Soldiers using shoelaces as tourniquets. Amputations done with handsaws. Morphine shortages. Yet, survival rates were staggeringly high. Derek's jaw tightened. My great-grandfather was in that war. Lost 2 fingers. Lit a cigarette with the remaining ones on his hospital bed, then got in a bar fight 6 months later. A burst of low, incredulous trilling came from one of the spectators. Your people fight after grievous injury? Derek shrugged. Sometimes because of it. Trillax turned back to the crowd. Let me show you something. He keyed his terminal, bringing up a new display. An anatomical comparison between humans and several known sentients. Layers peeled back skin, muscle, bone, vascular patterns, neurological pathways. Here, he gestured, the human skeletal matrix redundant in load-bearing joints, allowing compensation after fracture. Their circulatory system reroutes flow instinctively after trauma. Their neural networks are inefficiently wired, yet they allow for compartmentalization of pain. He switched the view again. This, he pointed, is a species not optimized for survival, yet built to refuse death. Derek interrupted. We didn't ask to be like this. Trillax turned. No, but you are. A silence followed. Not of awe yet, but of recalibration, of understanding shifting. A voice came from the left tier. A young Izari with translucent skin and oversized eyes leaned forward. If humans are still alive, she said, why haven't more of you come to the university? Derek's expression darkened slightly. Most don't even know you're out here. First contact got botched. Records misplaced. Earth was labeled non-viable by accident. Some politician buried the report after the probes disappeared. The galaxy moved on. Then how did you get here? Scouted, he said. Random incident. Spaceport fire on Vega 2. I dragged 3 engineers out of a collapsed hangar. They weren't human. Word got around. Someone higher up pulled my file. Next thing I knew, I was on a transport to Aurelius Theta. And the crash? Another student asked. Training run. We were simulating solo recon missions. Bad weather system knocked the shuttle into a dead spiral. I was the only one on board. He paused. Well, me and the emergency instruction manual. That drew a few soft laughs. Derek leaned back slightly. I'm not the best we have. Not by a long shot. There are people back home who could outthink, outfight, and outlast me. I just got here first. Trillax looked at him a long moment. Then, with surprising formality, he extended one hand. On behalf of the Interstellar Academic Council, I welcome Earth back to the known galaxy. Derek didn't take the hand. Instead, he said quietly, "We never left, you just stopped looking." By the following rotation, word had spread. Derek couldn't walk through the atrium without catching stares, some reverent, some cautious, a few openly terrified. In the hydroponic corridor, 2 Lyral students dropped their nutrient trays when he limped past. A trio of Honorians whispered something and subtly shifted their path to avoid coming too close. The staff nurse on Deck 8 offered him a mobility chair for ease, but her second set of hands trembled when she handed over the access key. He declined. The limp was bad but manageable. "You'd think I bit someone," Derek muttered to himself as he braced his arm, rotated his bad shoulder a few degrees, and kept walking. Professor Trillax requested a follow-up session, voluntary, informal, strictly for discussion. Derek had agreed, mostly because saying no wasn't something he was good at. Also, he needed access to the motion assist table in Lecture Bay 9. The standard seat still made his leg throb. He arrived early. The professor was already there, mid-conversation with a pale blue Medcari student, who glanced at Derek and immediately excused himself. Trillax gestured toward the central platform. "I appreciate your presence," he said. "Sure," Derek replied, lowering himself carefully onto the reinforced bench. "Wasn't doing much besides PT anyway." "Physical therapy," Trillax mused. "Another system I find both barbaric and fascinating. You purposefully re-injure muscle fibers to force adaptation." Derek smirked. "That's the polite way of saying it, yeah." The room filled quickly. More than 70 students showed up this time. No laughter, no casual curiosity. Just scribble-ready datapads and a collective tension that made the air feel thick. Trillax opened with an image. It wasn't Earth. It was a frozen planet in the Darlathi fringe, long abandoned. The surface was shattered, darkened craters, burnt ridges, no life, only static distortion. "This is Jaran 4, Trillax said. 2 centuries ago, an outbreak of neurological parasites wiped out its dominant species in under 5 weeks. Their civilization collapsed. A single probe landed here last cycle. It found nothing left." The image flickered. Then, another Ardathi Prime, jungle world, overrun by genetically modified flora. They engineered their own extinction, introduced a growth accelerant to their crops. Within 2 years, the ecosystem devoured every habitable zone. Murmurs stirred among the students. Trillax stepped aside and looked at Derek. "And Earth?" Derek sighed. "Pick your apocalypse." A few glanced up. "Climate collapse? We had that. Came close to boiling ourselves off the map. Got real creative with carbon trapping. Still digging out of it. Nuclear brinkmanship? Had that too. One near launch from ending the species in the 60 seconds. Bioengineering accidents, AI going rogue, mass extinction events. We've danced with the Reaper more times than I can count." "And yet," Trillax said, "you persist." "We adapt," Derek said. "Or we go extinct. We don't usually get second chances, but when we do, we make the most of them." A student raised a limb. "What about your body's reaction to failure? Your emotional pain responses are extreme." "You mean grief?" Derek asked. "Among your kind, the loss of one is felt for years. It clouds judgment, impacts decision-making. Other species adjust quickly." Derek nodded slowly. "Yeah, we don't let go easy." He hesitated, then said, "My younger sister died when I was 14. Lung failure. Genetic defect. Nothing we could do." A silence settled over the room. "It gutted my family," he said, "for a long time, but it also pushed me to study emergency medicine, then survival training. I figured if I could help keep someone else from feeling that, maybe she didn't die for nothing." Several students shifted uncomfortably. "That's the other thing about us," Derek said. "We don't like losing people. Sometimes that turns into war, sometimes into art, or invention, or dragging yourself out of a burning shuttle because you promised someone back home you'd see them again." One of the Drevian near the front lifted a tentacle. What is your pain tolerance like? She asked gently. Derek tilted his head, thoughtful. Depends. Everyone's different, but we'll keep going long past the point where it's smart to stop. He flexed his fingers slowly, then tapped his chest near the shoulder brace. Resetting this hurt like hell. I had to wedge the belt through a cracked console and lean into it. Felt like fire tearing through my arm. I blacked out halfway through. A few students looked nauseated. When I came to, he continued, I finished the reset and bound it up, because I knew if I didn't, the nerves would seize, and I'd lose the whole arm. Trillax looked disturbed. You willingly inflicted greater pain to regain function. No choice, Derek said. Same with the leg. If I hadn't stabilized it, I'd have bled internally. I tore strips from my seat cushion, melted wiring for straps, used tree sap to seal the puncture wound. You do what you have to. You keep moving. A voice called out skeptically, but at what cost? Derek looked toward the speaker, a tall, horned Exithari. The student's gaze was direct, unflinching. Is it not madness to endure what breaks others? Derek didn't blink. Maybe, but if I hadn't, I'd be dead. The Zethari said nothing more. Trillax approached again, holding a projection. It showed a model of Derek's shoulder bone fragmentation, partial tendon rupture, now fused into a thickening mesh of regrown tissue. I calculated recovery time for your injuries. Without medbay support, it should have taken 12 to 16 weeks to regain even limited range of motion. You are at 3. And moving. Not moving well, Derek corrected. But, yeah, pushing it. Trillax looked puzzled. Why? Derek gave a tired smile. Because when I stop, it stiffens. If it stiffens, I lose progress. If I lose progress, I fall behind in my program. If I fall behind, I lose my shot to stay here. The professor nodded, understanding dawning. And you will endure pain to remain part of this. Pain doesn't decide when I quit, Derek said. The room was utterly silent. Then, Aliral, voice trembling, asked, Are all humans like this? Derek looked up at the ceiling for a moment, then back down. No, but a lot of us could be, if we have to. A moment passed. Then another student, Izari, again timidly raised a hand. May I ask something less serious? Derek waved his good hand. Please. Is it true that caffeine fuels your soldiers? That actually drew a grin. In part, yeah. During long ops, caffeine's critical. Coffee, energy tabs, sugar. We even had gum with stimulants for blackout missions. Gum? Someone repeated, horrified. It helps you stay awake. Trust me. Some wars were won on bad sleep and strong espresso. Trillax looked deeply disturbed. You chemically enhance yourselves to function while injured or exhausted. Sometimes, Derek said. But honestly, half the time, it's just spite and stubbornness. The professor blinked. Spite? You know, anger, pushing through because we refuse to give in. A long pause. Trillax finally said, I need time to process this. Derek nodded, standing slowly, grunting as he found his balance. Take your time, we've only just started showing up. As he limped toward the exit, several students instinctively stepped aside. Derek paused at the door. You're asking the wrong question, by the way. Trillax turned. What do you mean? It's not how do humans survive so much, Derek said over his shoulder. It's why do we always get back up? 2 weeks passed. By then, the limp was less noticeable. Derek could lift his left arm to shoulder height without grimacing. The tremor still came when he overexerted, but the swelling in his leg had finally gone down. He walked the campus without assistance, slow, sure, but upright. He wasn't surprised when the invitation came. Not from Trillax this time. It came from the Council of Interstellar Species Research, a closed symposium reserved for matters of galactic biological interest. Derek's inclusion was labeled exceptional. That was code for, we're not sure what you are, but you scare us too much to ignore it. The symposium chamber was smaller than the main lecture hall, but heavier with status. Half the seating was filled by species who didn't breathe the same air, but tolerated temporary field bubbles to be there. The lighting was colder. The questions would be, too. Professor Trillax stood near the dais. He nodded as Derek entered, this time with no escort, no professor shielding him, no dramatic reveal. He simply walked to the center, took a breath, and faced the unknown. A dozen delegates watched him, flanked by research assistants and legal advisors. One of the presiding speakers, high-cheeked, obsidian-skinned, a Frall scholar known for emotionless questioning, began the session. Midshipman Klein, the purpose of this inquiry is to assess your species classification on the Interstellar Biohazard and Threat Index. Are you prepared to testify? Derek blinked. That's a thing? It is, the Frall said flatly. You may begin by clarifying the current condition of your injuries. Derek rolled his left shoulder. 3 fractures, 1 dislocation, torn ligament. I'm 5 weeks into an 8-week healing timeline, mobility at 70%. I've been cleared for light duty and self-paced physical therapy, pains manageable without meds. A Drevian researcher tapped her translator. What does manageable mean? I can sleep through the night, stand for extended periods, and climb 2 flights of stairs without blacking out, he replied. That's good, for us. Were those results achieved through regenerative biotech? Nope, just a lot of rehab and a high-protein diet, scar tissues doing most of the patchwork. Trelax stepped forward, addressing the council. For reference, this recovery timeline would be fatal to 1/3 of our known species. The other 2/3 would require suspended animation and tissue reconstruction. The Frall looked at Derek. What explains your survival? He paused. A combination of field training, dumb luck, and hating the idea of dying alone in a ravine. That got a few muffled sounds, chuckles, gasps, he couldn't tell. We have reviewed the circumstances of your crash, the Frall said. You utilize materials including seat foam, battery wire, resinous plant sap, and broken plating to repair yourself and build an emergency transmitter. Do you consider this standard practice? Derek shook his head. Standard? No expected? Yeah. You expect to survive with no tools, in hostile environments, using trash? When the alternative is dying? Yes. A new delegate spoke tall, armored in polished scales, a strategic analyst for the Mux Coalition. Your cultural media suggests your species even turns disaster into recreation. Simulations, games, tests of endurance. Why? Derek considered. So we're ready when the real thing hits. He looked around the room. You have to understand, on Earth, bad things happen all the time. Fires, floods, plagues. We learn by throwing ourselves into danger in controlled ways. That way, when it's not controlled, we already know how to react. Trelax added quietly, they pre-traumatize themselves. The words hung heavy in the chamber. A Treshkal student near the wall raised a tendril. What would happen if your planet was attacked? Derek scratched his jaw. Depends who attacks, but it wouldn't go well for them. How so? Because we're not centralized, no single point of failure, and when things go bad, really bad, we stop panicking and start cooperating. You become unified? No, Derek said. We become terrifyingly resourceful. A memory surfaced unbidden. He saw himself, jammed under a broken bulkhead on that moon, shoulder on fire, leg numb, blood pooling under his back, fingers digging through bent metal and cold soil to find wiring, not to escape, just to call for help. Not even sure if anyone would hear, but trying anyway. Always trying. I don't think we're the deadliest species because we're violent, he said softly. I think it's because we won't stop until we win, or at least until we drag ourselves far enough to make someone else's job easier. One of the observers typed a note. Another leaned forward. Your kind has no biological edge, no venom, no claws. You're weak compared to others, yet you thrive in conflict. Derek nodded. Yeah, because we're not built for peace. We're built for recovery. The Frall's gaze didn't waver. You claim your species can recover from anything. No, Derek said. Not anything. We grieve, we fall apart, we lose people, and sometimes we never bounce back the same way. He paused, meeting every eye in the room. But we keep going. Trelax spoke again, this time without notes. There is a concept I had dismissed until recently, a metric for danger not based on size, weaponry, or technology, but on sheer refusal to die, on the ingenuity of survival, on making disaster a stepping stone instead of a tomb. He looked directly at Derek. I once taught that the deadliest species was extinct. I now submit to the Council. It is alive, difficult to categorize, and native to a small, blue planet called Earth. There were no objections. The F-Roll tapped his console. Earth's status will be updated accordingly. Its inhabitants are to be approached with diplomatic caution, not military assessment. Until further review, all assumptions of planetary vacancy are to be suspended. The session ended without ceremony. Derek left the chamber through the side corridor, walking slowly. He passed a group of first-year students. None spoke, but one of them, the youngest, with soft golden skin and wide vertical eyes, gave him a small bow as he passed. That night, Trillax found him on the observation deck. The stars outside shimmered over the rim of a gas giant. Derek sat alone, legs stretched, shoulder resting on the low rail, a heat wrap pulsing beneath his jacket. Trillax approached quietly. You never told them the worst part. Derek didn't turn. Didn't need to. About the crash. About being alone. Derek shrugged. They wouldn't get it. Not really. Trillax stood beside him. I reviewed your vitals from that first scan. You had a 20% chance of survival unaided. Lower, given infection risk. Sounds about right. You're aware most species would have accepted death. Derek looked out at the stars. That's the difference, Professor. He turned now, looking Trillax in the eye. We don't wait for death to find us. We crawl away from it. Bleeding, cursing, half-broken, but moving. Always moving. Trillax said nothing for a long time. Then, finally, with a quiet bow of his head, he said, Then let this stand. Not as fear, not as warning, but respect. Derek exhaled slowly. That's all we ever wanted. And somewhere, far from Aurelius Theta, on the edge of the Perseid Drift, a scout ship recorded telemetry from a seemingly empty system. A blue-green world turned slowly beneath a thin ozone veil. No comm signals, no active satellites. The probe labeled it Terra 3. The operator paused, hesitating at the classification. He reached for the uninhabited tag, then thought better of it, and quietly typed, Do not assume.